This is Fantasy Football Today from CBSSports.com.
Let's play Starter Sit for Week 13 here on Fantasy Football Today. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This is a special presentation of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. I'm Adam Azer with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard, and we are talking about who to start and who to sit at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And we begin with you, Jamie, and Josh McCown. He is a start at Minnesota.
Yeah, he's been playing great. You know, you talk about Jay Cutler stepping out because of the ankle injury. They couldn't have been in a better situation to get Josh McCown to come in and play at the level that he has. He's got a great matchup this week against Minnesota. They really struggled to stop every passing game that they faced. And last week, the two quarterbacks for the Packers combined for 20-plus fantasy points. So I think you see McCown coming off a very solid performance in St. Louis. He keeps it going. Two great receivers, obviously, with Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey. He's getting Martellus Bennett back involved. He's a top 10 quarterback for me this week.
Dave, RG3 coming off a bad performance Monday night against San Francisco. Better matchup with the Giants coming to town, but not good enough for you to say start him.
I think it could be over for RG3, at least for this season, for fantasy owners. I think he's a major risk. I don't like the way that he's playing, and I don't think the matchup's that great. You look at the last 5 opponents the Giants have had. They've held every quarterback to 19 fantasy points or less, 4 of them to single digits, and there were a lot of crummy running quarterbacks in that stretch. But RG3 isn't exactly playing well. If he's got all of his weapons, if he's got Jordan Reed back, if he's got a healthy receiving core, if the offensive line's a little bit better, then maybe I like him enough to call him a borderline starter. But if he doesn't have those guys and he goes out and he struggles, you're going to see Kirk Cousins come in for the Redskins. So that's a big reason why I don't want to start RG3. If he gets off to a bad start, he's not going to have that chance to rebound like he did it earlier this season. And so he's a sit for me.
To the running backs, Bilal Powell could be a guy that wins you a week, maybe more. So fantasy owners, you need to pick up Bilal Powell. Jamie, you say you need to start Bilal Powell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if he's the guy there, if Chris Ivory doesn't play, you're talking about somebody who has a great matchup at his hands. You know, he started out the season playing really well, 3 games with double digits in fantasy points in his first 4 outings. The Dolphins have allowed 10 touchdowns to opposing running backs. 9 have reached double digits in fantasy points. So Bilal Powell would step into a run-based offense with a team that had been relying on Chris Ivory to handle that role, and now Powell would get that job back. So I love the matchup, and I think if he's still available on waivers, go get him. And if you need to start him this week, I think he's actually a top 20 running back.
Get fired up for that Monday Night Football game, Seattle hosting New Orleans, but don't get fired up if you own the New Orleans running backs, Dave.
Yeah, because it's a mess, and they're going to take away from each other. And Pierre Thomas is the best of those guys, and even I wouldn't call him a great start this week. He's more of a sit for me. Guy who might be able to get you 8 or 9 fantasy points in a standard league. A little bit better than that in a PPR.
Pretty good.
Well, I don't know if that's really that good. And you look at the matchup.
Top 20?
I don't know what kind of opportunity he's going to have to score. Seattle's only allowed 5 touchdowns to running backs all season long, less than 90 rushing yards per game on average to running backs. So I think you can try and get away from these guys.
How about some wide receivers? And Dave, you're going to say start Dwayne Bowe. He scored last time he faced Denver. So you like him this week?
I think Kansas City has to throw in this game. And listen, Jamal Charles is going to do his thing, but he'll also get work out of the backfield. And Alex Smith has started to put the ball in the air. It's because Kansas City knows that if they're going to do anything in the playoffs this year, they have to be more than a one-dimensional team. And we've seen Dwayne Bowe's numbers perk up the last couple of weeks. He scored in 2 straight. And the way that Denver secondary looks right now, they're banged up. I think there's going to be opportunities for Bowe to get in the end zone again. So I like him.
T.Y. Hilton facing a Titans defense that is just absolutely brutal for wide receivers, and you say sit him.
Yeah, I think you're looking at T.Y. Hilton. You know, it's a much better situation for him being at home than on the road. That's typically where he struggles. He has been better indoors than outdoors on grass, but I think you're looking at this Tennessee defense. No wide receiver has scored against them since week 2. No wide receiver has got double digits in fantasy points against them since week 2. So I think you're looking at Hilton. They faced each other 2 weeks ago in terms of the Titans versus Hilton. They shut him down. It was in Tennessee. Again, he'll be a little bit better this week because he's back at home, but he's barely a number 3 receiver for me this week. I think you can avoid T.Y. Hilton.
And when I look now at the tight ends, and Dave, will go to you for the start. Jordan Cameron against Jacksonville, Brandon Weeden playing.
Right, and I think that's going to make a difference because I think Brandon Weeden can find Jordan Cameron downfield. That's something that Jason Campbell couldn't get done before. And we've come close to seeing Jordan Cameron score the past couple of weeks. I think this week he finally does it. I think the matchup's a little better for him against Jacksonville. That's a defense that is on the rise, but tight ends have done well against them this year. So I like Jordan Cameron.
Antonio Gates, he's been struggling, and he's facing Cincinnati, and he is a sit.
Yeah, he's just outside my top 12. You know, we're seeing him struggle now, the last few weeks. Obviously, he scored against Miami, but as Adam knows well aware of, that the Dolphins stink against tight ends. So I think you're seeing Antonio Gates. When the matchup's not fully in his favor, I don't know how much you can trust him. And Cincinnati will see which defense shows up coming off their bye week. But I think they should be able to contain Antonio Gates. And right now, he's starting to lose production to the second tight end in San Diego, Ladarius Green, who had a better game than Gates last week against Kansas City. So I think Gates is still worth starting if he's been your guy so far. He's going to be in that 10 to 15 range. It just depends on if he scores or not. If he doesn't score, the yards will be minimal. So it's kind of hard to depend on him.
Well, we have much more for you on Fantasy Football Today, live Tuesday through Friday, most weeks, not on Thanksgiving week. Tuesday through Friday, noon Eastern time. Sunday morning, Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg, Jason Horowitz, and Chad Johnson have Fantasy Football Today for you for 2 hours, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we've got a night show at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Also go to the website for all of our rankings, projections, podcasts, and more. For Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg, I'm Adam Azer. This has been an exclusive presentation of Fantasy Football Today for CBS Local Sports. Good luck in Week 13.